Well, good morning. It is Sunday, March the 6th of 2022. I pray that you had a great week last week and we'll have another great week this week. So one day this past week, I was watching a movie at home on TV. I won't even bother telling you the name of the movie. It turned out to be it wasn't all that good. But anyway, and it was part of the storyline was this man and a woman met and fell in love. Um, Probably more so the man with the woman at the beginning, anyway. But anyway, the woman finds herself in kind of a tough spot and she needs some help. And so this man, who is again falling in love with her, immediately steps in and helps her out of her difficult situation. And one of the things that I thought of was Paul's letter to the saints in Philippi. And in that great passage in what we know as chapter 2, where Paul writes about how we should have the mind of Christ in us, who did not think that equality with God was a thing to be held on to at all cost, but took upon himself the form of a servant by being made in the likeness of a man, and then being found in human form, he humbles himself even further by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. And as a result of that, God has highly exalted him. And I think sometimes we stop there. But beginning in what we know as verse 12, Paul draws a conclusion from that when he writes, "Therefore, my beloved, as you have always obeyed, so now, not only as in my presence, but much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God who works in you, both to will and to work for his good pleasure. Do all things without grumbling or disputing, that you may be blameless and innocent, children of God without blemish, in the midst of a crooked and twisted generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world." Wow. Stepping in to help somebody who's in trouble, volunteering your time and your effort to help somebody who needs it, stepping in and helping others when you could just as easily turn around and walk away. And Paul says to do that without grumbling about it, without disputing, without arguing about it. Just humble yourself, step in, help somebody who's in trouble, so that we can be children of God, because we are children of God without blemish in the midst of a crooked and twisted generation. Now, Paul is writing again thousands of years ago. It's hard to argue if somebody said today we are living in a crooked and twisted generation. We are experiencing worldwide all kinds of difficulties, all kinds of problems. There are millions of people who need help. There are people within our neighborhood, within our city, who need help. And sometimes we just go driving on by, walking on by, living our life as if we are the most important people on the face of God's earth at this time, and that we can't be bothered to humble ourselves to help somebody. And Paul writes to these saints in the city of Philippi, and he says, do these things. Humble yourself. Help people without grumbling and disputing, because you're living in the midst of a crooked and twisted generation, and among that crooked and twisted generation, you shine as lights in the world. Now, I know it can be awesome and terrifying, if you will, and frightening that we are lights in the world. But let's be honest with ourselves. It doesn't take a genius and it doesn't take somebody with a lot of wealth to give somebody who is thirsty a cup of cold water. It's no great act of sacrifice for most of us to get rid of totally or cut down on the 107 TV channels that we have and volunteer at a homeless shelter or fix some meals and take it to some people who are hurting. It's no great act of sacrifice for most of us to do that. And to do it willingly and to do it without grumbling. And in doing so, we are shining as lights in the world. And perhaps if we are the light of the world that we are supposed to be, there's a really good chance that some of the people who are lost and living in darkness will see the light and come to us and will ask us, how can we be lights in the midst of this crooked and twisted generation? And we can tell them about the God who loved them enough to send his son to die for them. And we can tell them about Jesus who left heaven and humbled himself and became a man, and then finding himself in human form, humbled himself even further and became a servant to the point of death. And we can tell them about God's Spirit, whom he has given to his children to serve as a guide and a comforter along life's way, simply by helping somebody who needs help. Well, I pray that you'll think about it, and I pray that you have a great week.